So Ritual League is starting tomorrow. I'm going to be league starting with Animate Weapon. There's not a lot of people playing Animate Weapon. In Heist League, there were only 2 Animate Weapon build guys on the forums. And credit to ThanatoZ, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, and Ghazzy for the time they took to make their build guides. I'll give my thoughts and opinions on their thoughts and opinions, even though no one asked for that. ThanatoZ really champions Animate Weapon as a league starter, and I couldn't agree more. I'll also be mentioning things from their videos and guides because they're both very well written. I'll put links below. The only information you're getting from this is quality of life. So Animate Weapon, quick explanation of the pros and cons. It has the highest theoretical DPS of any minion in the game because you could technically, with the mirror tier budget, you could animate like a bunch of like 1200 DPS weapons. As a long duration, they fly over objects just like SRS. Unlike SRS though, you can reposition them by using convocation. They belong in the top tier of melee minions when they're at their best. The cons are, it's a 2-step process to summoning Animate Weapon when you're doing it manually. And it makes a quality of life of Animate Weapon horrible compared to pretty much every other minion skill in the game. And this is pretty much why no one plays it. And this is also why I'm taking the time to make this guide to address those cons and share my experience that I had in Heist League. And maybe more people will play it and expand on what I will expound on. So, the core mechanic for playing Animate Weapon. Like, I had people say some nasty things, right? Because I didn't post a POB in some of my other videos, but posting a POB won't do you any good if you don't understand what the hell is going on. So we're going to get into the core mechanics. Like, the main thing is you do need a trigger weapon with this craft. Trigger is not going to spell when you use a skill. You put Animate Weapon in the first slot, gem slot, and your weapon in your secondary set that you weapon swap to, you need to have another Animate Weapon in the exact same gem slot. So they're both in the first one, and of course it's linked to Unleash and then Bladefall. So at the beginning of a new zone that you enter, you just weapon swap. You summon your weapons by putting out your Bladefalls and then hitting Animate Weapon, and then you go and play the build and just spam instant skill on like left mouse button, or you can do the numlock trick, or just press and hold that button that triggers that instant skill. I'll go into more of this stuff in another video where it's just going to be me going over POBs and every gem and item slot for the character. Even though it might be different than like how I played it in Heist League. But for now, we're going to go over my Heist League experience because I did not league start with Animate Weapon, full disclosure. I did test it early league while I was still on budget gear. Just like the times I tried it before, it was strong but annoying. I ended up investing a lot of currency into a cool Syndicate Operative, Spectre, Skelly Zombie build, but it wasn't. I didn't have the same experience that I did with Redemption Sentries and Awakened Fork that I did in Harvest League, obviously with Harvest Crafted gear. And like with Heist being buggy, like I wasn't having a lot of fun, so I tried something different. I tried Chains of Command, which I'd never tried before, and it was awful. You have so little control in situations that matter the most. I tried a traditional Animate Weapon build, which would just be like following the 2 people that I mentioned, like word for word, verbatim. And like the quality of life feels bad if you're like manually summoning Animate Weapon. Like I read how terrible Animate Weapon was in Delve, and I can tell you from personal experience, it's not good. So I personally tried a Pure Fizz, because I haven't played Pure Fizz minion build maybe ever. But anyway, I used it. I put it in the triggered socket of Skillcraft, and I ended up really enjoying the build. It was very good. It was a build that I felt comfortable playing, and a build that I could feel comfortable recommending to other people. I did all the content in the game deathless. As a matter of fact, I've gotten questions because like I pop up on POE Ninja. There are 9 people that played Animate Weapon that will show up on here on the ladder, and I am 2 of them. So I am over 22% of the people that are here. These are both my characters. And as you can see here, like Delve is a struggle for Animate Weapon if you're playing it manually in the traditional way. I got down to 612. I definitely felt like I had the damage to get down deeper, but once I start dying more than like once every like 6 or 7 nodes, like I just don't enjoy Delve unless I'm doing deep Delve, and this is definitely not a deep Delve build. We're going to get into the pros and cons. The pros are that this build is just really cheap to get into. If you're doing the pure fizz, there are no uniques required. The gear flexibility is S tier, which means that because you have so much gear flexibility, you can do magic find. Your HP can vary somewhere between 6.5 to 8.5k HP at, like, let's say level 90. Like if you were wearing a Calm's Heart, because you can wear a Calm's Heart because we're using a staff, and that's where your main skill is socketed into. It can be very lazy. Like you can semi-AFK blight maps, Coward's Trowel, like the Beachhead Arena. It has good defenses. Like with Flesh Offering, you're still near max block, depending on the gear, because you can get max attack block on your chest, and you can get it on your gloves with an Elder mod. We'll get into that stuff later, but it's very tanky. And obviously, you can use Bone Offering to very easily reach max block and like get over 50% max spell block. The damage is good. I'm going to tell you right now, like there are numbers on POB, like personally, you can get over 60 million, right? Like when you have your Pride Aura out and the moon is in full phase, and like, you know, your chair is 30 degrees away from your monitor and all kinds of crazy shit. But at its best, it feels like a 25 million DPS build, like somewhere a little bit above that. I should probably change that. And that at a budget, especially for pure fizz, it feels like 5. Once you kind of get your cluster jewels and you move away from the basic passive tree, it feels like a 10 million DPS build. And then once you actually get like minion movement speed and like good gear, it's like a 25 million plus. Like the numbers don't matter. It's all about how it feels. That's the most important thing. And that's why I wrote the build guide, because like you're gonna get you can get really crazy POB numbers with Animate Weapon, but it's all about how the build feels. And there's, like I said, there's a reason why people don't play it. So with everything I said, it is definitely hardcore viable. Like you definitely have enough defenses and recovery, especially when you're using Bone Offering. You should be doing on hardcore, and you should be knowing what you're already doing if you're playing hardcore or solo self-found, because this is solo self-found viable. You will eventually get those trigger crafts, and there are no uniques required, so you can play this in SSF. And if you don't like it, it's easy to transition into another summer build. That is another pro that I would put on the list. The big negative is obviously it requires the trigger craft to be unveiled. And if you really want to improve your weapon and get more damage, like you're going to need other crafts to be unveiled. That takes time. But no matter what, even if you had all that available to you, I don't recommend leveling with Animate Weapon through the campaign, even if I had Twink gear. Now, I know there are some people that aren't going to be, that are newer to the game. They're not going to be farming like, Shaper and Elder like the first weekend, like I will, like I plan to in Ritual League. And they want to just experience skill. I will say Thanatos, he has a good leveling explanation in his build guide. I will say that the build does feel very different once you actually invest into minion movement speed, which you're going to primarily want on your amulet, on your jewelry. So your amulet and your rings, and also on your Ghazzy Abyss jewels once you can. Now, improving your gear is hard without Harvest. That is a big negative about it that I ran into in Heist League, where we didn't have access to Harvest crafting. Now, Harvest crafting is coming back, but Harvest League itself, like the crafting we had from that, is not coming back. So if you don't like going on TFT and trading for crafts, and you're playing SSF, like your RNG could be really bad and you might run into a brick wall. I still think it'll be fine because you should be able to still like craft good gear, just with essences of fear, and be able to like get the resists that you need. I think it'll be fine. Also, don't expect this. This is not a deep delve build. It can do like 60-80% delirium maps. It's not 100% delirium map farmer. Maybe it can be. The way I played it, it wasn't. I did do 100% delirium maps. It took like 20 minutes. I didn't like it, but for the most part, I was farming between 40 to 80% delirium maps, depending on the map mods. And I was able to get down to, I believe it is 612. Yeah, 612 in delve. And as far as I know, that's the deepest anybody's gotten with just an animate weapon. Like I didn't cheese this shit. Like I didn't use another build to get down to this depth. Like I actually got down to that depth using animate weapon as my main skill. But it's not going to take you too much further than like 500-600 in softcore without a struggle. I think you can get down to like 400 death lifts though. So going back to the other people that have already kind of conquered the anime weapon build guides, the damage scaling is like the big contention between the two of them. And so I want to talk about the Cold versus Fizz and Pale and what's better, because I know that Ghazzy, he champions going Fizz and Pale. I know I think he still recommends like the Cold Iron points, and I know that Thanatos, he's all about going Cold. Fizz is dirt cheap. On a league start, you should be going pure Fizz. That's what you should be planning for. It requires way less dexterity requirements, and you can league start on a shoestring budget. In SSF, it would be very easy to do this until you maybe get like triad grip gloves. The problem with Fizz is that the damage is inconsistent. And the higher the damage here is, like theoretically on Path of Building, the worse it actually feels when you're playing the game. Because you get these huge swings because of the more multipliers you get from, let's say, like Pride or Flesh and Stone. Yeah, Flesh and Stone, like Link to Maim or something like that. Like Flesh and Stone has a horrible radius. Pride has a horrible radius, and it also requires the enemy to be basically almost in melee range while you're fighting them, which is something that Cold doesn't have. Like Hatred and Haste, they both have very large AoEs on their auras, and all you have to do is apply Elemental Equilibrium, and automatically their damage feels a lot better. So the damage on Cold is more consistent. It's definitely higher. You get freezes, but the problem is you do have to use a triad grip, and you got to get 4 green on it, which means that you're not going to get any stats from your glove slot, which means less HP and like no defense from it. I'm still going to start the typical way that I do almost every league when I league start as a summoner. I'll talk about this more later. And I'm going to probably transition into physical animate weapon by the time I get to yellow tier maps, have a tabula, something like that. And then I'm going to farm red tier content and bosses. And then I might transition into Cold animate weapon. I'm going to make another video discussing POBs and like every item slot you can have in the build. But I will say this, like while a lot of people are like getting angry at GGG for like nerfing specters and nerfing carrion golems, those builds, even before the nerfs, were harder to get into and were not much better than this build on the much less budget. Like while people that are playing like a carrion golem build, ice golems, stone golems, it doesn't fucking matter. Like they're going to be struggling to get their primordial jewels and shit. Like the first weekend, you're just going to be cruising along once you get this trigger craft. There are people that I know that can help you out if you're in like softcore trade league that can get the craft much sooner. Like that's all they do is do like betrayal shit, and they get that craft like as soon as possible. People that are playing Spectre builds are going to want like +1 Spectre chest. They're going to want like +1 to Spectre gem boots and all that shit. You're going to be cruising along. because your gear flexibility is so much better. Like your league start is going to be so much better. And like I said, I can't agree with Thanatos like anymore. Like after playing Animate Weapon to a higher level, like it's one of the best league starts you can have. And I'll go over the gear and explain just how insane it can really get in another video.